This is Darth Vader.
You are part of the Rebel Alliance and a traitor. Take it away!
This is also Darth Vader.
You are part of the Rebel Alliance and a traitor. Take her away.
Here he is again.
Start tearing this ship apart piece by piece until you find those tapes. Find the passengers of this vessel. I want them alive!
But something's wrong here. The voice is soft and muffled, and you can even hear a gentle accent coming through.
Asteroids do not concern me, Admiral. I want that ship, not excuses.
But most important, the voice just feels wrong.
It's her hope of the data being used against us, which is the pillar of her resistance to our mind probe.
That's because the man in the suit isn't the man you're hearing.
This will be a day long remembered. It has seen the end of Kenobi and will soon see the end of the rebellion.
And that's what I want to talk about today.
He will join us or die, Master.
How much a single voice can shape a character.
No, I am your father.
And how the most iconic villain in movie history got his, from just about the last person anyone would expect. So how does a stage actor most moviegoers had never heard of end up behind the most famous mask in cinema? To answer that, we have to go back to what Darth Vader was supposed to be. From the very first script, Lucas wrote him as part man, part machine, kept alive by a life support system you could hear working. A character built to make you afraid the second he walked into a room. And David Prowse looked the part completely. The size, the presence, the slow menace, all of that was him. Lucas had promised Prowse that his voice would be used, that they'd clean it up later in the studio. But the truth is, that was never really gonna happen, because the moment Prowse spoke, the whole illusion cracked.
Start tearing this ship apart piece by piece until you find those tapes. Find the passengers of this vessel. I want them alive!
I can still hear David Prowse's accent in the Darth Vader mask muffled because he would do the real dialogue.
Lucas knew the voice had to carry half the character. A villain who barely moves his face, who hides behind a mask, lives or dies on how he sounds. So Lucas went looking for a voice that could do what the costume couldn't. His first thought was one of the most famous voices in the world, Orson Welles.
Welcome, Megatron. I am Unicron. I have summoned you here for a purpose.
The legendary star of Citizen Kane.
I don't know how to run a newspaper, Mr. Thatcher. I just try everything I can think of. Thatcher is one of our most devoted readers. He knows.
But that was exactly the problem. Welles was too recognizable. The second audiences heard him, they wouldn't hear Darth Vader. So Lucas kept looking, until one day, George Lucas sat down and watched a 1976 film called The Bingo Long Traveling All-Stars and Motor Kings.
What do we never run out of in this country? White folks!
By 1977, Jones was a giant on the stage and almost a stranger to everyone else. On Broadway, he was a star, years of Shakespeare behind him. Othello, Hamlet, King Lear, the kind of roles that demand a voice which can fill a room. He'd won a Tony for The Great White Hope, playing a boxer loosely based on Jack Johnson, and when it became a film, that performance earned him an Oscar nomination for Best Actor.
And the winner is James Earl Jones.
But to the average moviegoer, he was a voice without a face, and buried inside a mask. Nobody would place that voice either. So on March 1st, 1977, Jones walked into a recording booth and laid down what would become some of the most iconic lines in the history of cinema.
You don't know the power of the dark side. I must obey my master. You underestimate the power of the dark side. If you will not fight, then you will meet your destiny.
He read every one of Vader's lines in a single afternoon.
And so how much did you actually work on that film?
We spent about 2.5 hours to do Darth Vader.
That's incredible. You came in and did that in 2.5 hours and it had such an effect.
But then he did something almost no other actor would do. For the first two films, he kept his name off the character and only took the credit on Return of the Jedi, because it was Darth Vader's last canon appearance in the movies. To Jones, the real Darth Vader was David Prowse, the man who wore the suit on set. What he'd done in the booth, he considered closer to a sound effect than a performance.
I'm simply special effects. George has recently admitted that when he hired David Prowse, he thought that was his Darth Vader. This guy who's over 6 foot, 6.5 feet tall, and fits in the uniform, the costume, with a slight Scottish accent.
For years, when people asked if that was really him behind the mask, he'd just deny it and let the mystery sit.
And I did not even want film credit, neither for the first or the second. I took the film credit on the third only because it was Darth Vader's last sound.
But I want to briefly go over just how ironic it is that Jones was ever chosen to voice Darth Vader in the first place. Jones was born in Mississippi in 1931, and as a boy, he was sent to live on a farm in Michigan.
Come together, he realized he wanted a darker voice or a bass voice. So he called around. I think he thought of Orson Welles first, and then realized that he might be too recognizable.
That's right.
So he picks a kid that comes from Mississippi who stutters and raised in Michigan, you know.
For about 8 years, from first grade to his freshman year of high school, he was functionally mute.
But that wasn't his only hurdle. He was a boy who stuttered. He spent years not talking at all.
The only place he felt free to use his voice was out on the farm, alone, talking to the animals. What pulled him out was a high school English teacher named Donald Crouch. Crouch caught him writing poetry and told him a poem that couldn't be his own, that he'd have to prove he wrote it by reciting it out loud to the class. Jones stood up and got through the whole thing without stuttering once. And that hard-won relationship with his own voice is what made him such a unique fit for Darth Vader.
Until one day, he wrote a poem in high school.
There was a teacher who looked at one of your poems and said, "This is so good, I want you to prove that you wrote this."
Yeah.
Do you remember standing up and reading that?
Oh yeah, and getting through it without stuttering.
Vader was part machine, and the less human he sounded, the more menacing he became. It took real control to say so much while giving away so little. And the result was a voice that was somehow both expressionless and terrifying at once. But Jones's voice was only half of it. The other part of the voice comes from Ben Burtt.
Who wants to shoot?
Yeah.
There's a trigger back here.
He had the original stuff, like that he created Star Wars, that he sparked my imagination as a child. You know, for hours I would play in the backyard imitating the sounds that he came up with.
The sound designer for Star Wars, responsible for things like the ships, lightsabers, and of course, the respirator for Darth Vader. Prowse gave Darth Vader his body, Burtt gave him his breath, and James Earl Jones gave him his voice. Voice acting is a craft that usually doesn't get much notice. Most of the time, the actor on screen takes a spotlight, and the voice behind the character goes unheard. It's an almost invisible role, but arguably one of the hardest. You have to pour every bit of emotion into your voice alone, with far fewer tools to reach the viewer. No face, no expression, just sound. So what James Earl Jones, David Prowse, and Ben Burtt pulled off with Darth Vader is genuinely something special. 3 people, each stepping back from the spotlight, coming together to make one character work. It showed the world just how much a character's voice can matter, and it helped pave the way for the voice actors who came after. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to subscribe and watch this one next.